Hey guys, it's Matt Hanham here and welcome to the Amplify Your Business podcast. Okay, welcome to another episode of Amplify Your Business. It's Matt Hanham here and I have a very special guest today, Mr. Duncan Wardle. Duncan is an innovation and creativity expert. He's worked with Disney for over 25 years. But finished recently. Consulted for brands like Coca-Cola, Forbes, my favorite, the NBA, and I think a few teams in there as well, and Ford Motors, just to name a few. And the one thing is you're responsible for some amazing PR stunts like getting a little Buzz Lightyear doll up in space. So Duncan, welcome.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yes, look, I'm really happy. It's been a lot of anticipation getting you over here in Australia and in Perth in particular. And look, we're really excited for this day to come. You've just delivered an amazing keynote to our Get Amplified event, and I just couldn't be happier. So, how's the tour gone for you so far? The Australian tour.
If you know, so never let a girl. If you know a girl called Alicia, right, and never say it. Fill me up, because fill me up she has. But it's been a real pleasure. Here's the thing: I'm here primarily for Change the World, right?
Yep.
So it's been Brisbane, Sydney, Perth, Melbourne, helping 1,000 different charities innovate. And they're all good people. And here's the thing, you spend days alongside people who the only thing they do is wake up in the morning and care about making life better for somebody else. And I spent 25 years focused on quarterly results. It's very humbling. And I met this lady yesterday. She's 78 years old. She rescues dogs and cats. Yep. But the passion she talks with her purpose, right, is it's just humbling. It's absolutely, really a humbling experience.
That's great. So, look, I'm glad. It sounds like you've really enjoyed it. It's been a busy time, but you've really enjoyed it here. So, what's you've been to Australia once before. You mentioned a few hours. You got down for a board meeting.
4 hours.
You've spent a little bit longer this time. What's the most interesting or strange thing that you've come across in your time here in Australia?
I know what a budgie smuggler is now. I didn't know that before. I know now. I announced on stage yesterday. I was trying to tell the joke, and I said, budgie hammock, and everybody sort of said budgie smuggler. I was like, okay, budgie smuggler. So that was. Oh, and I tried Vegemite. So, and yes, you're right. It's better than Marmite. So I'll give you that.
I definitely agree. Yeah, it's funny. I forget about those things, but those very Australian things. And have you had a chance to see a kangaroo or do anything like that?
I went to the Irwin Zoo, Australia Zoo, and I got to go behind the scenes in the hospital, and it's just the work they do. Yeah. The hospital is not attached to the facility, so all the animals come in there or get released back into the wild, providing they can. Yeah. And again, just the people, this young girl, right? You're just chatting to her. Anybody under 50 is young for me. The passion with which she speaks about her job, and this is what is going to catch a lot of companies out, because they're watching their big data, they're watching artificial intelligence, watching blockchain, and they're right to watch all of them and focus on. What they're not looking at is a generation called Generation Z. Yeah. They're coming up underneath the millennials, and they care more about purpose than profit. So, for example, my daughter graduated from university, 3 months, didn't have a job, but she had a list of 72 companies she didn't want to work for. I met a young guy out in Caloundra. Did I get that right?
I'm not sure.
On the Sunshine Coast.
Okay. Yep.
And I was just amazed at his passion for what he wants to do, and he wants to be an entrepreneur. Well, why does this entire generation, look at them all, they all want to be an entrepreneurs. Why? They don't trust the corporates. That's why. Because the corporates don't know their purpose is quarterly results. And this generation, if your purpose is quarterly results, and then you're out, you're gone. I don't care how big your brand is. This generation cares more about what you stand for than what you're selling. And not only will they not buy your products and services, they don't want to work for you either. And so you've got three big challenges. Artificial intelligence is coming. I think that's a big one. The other one is most companies have been very successful from 1900 to 2010 in the we build it, they will come model. And it worked very well for all of them. Well, that doesn't work anymore. And so, but they're still stuck there because their executives are from that generation, right? And so they're really stuck about being, instead of being product centric, being consumer centric. So just the example I shared was this afternoon was, if we started our project at Disney by saying, how might we make more money, which is how most companies start their projects, we'd have put the gate prices up and increased our prices by 2%. But instead of that, we took the biggest consumer pain point and said, what if there were no lines? And imagine a world where that might actually happen. Fast forward, we created Disney's Magic Band, which allows people to check into their room without going to the front desk. They swipe to get in the park. Their reservations for their attractions are on the Magic Band. If you touch the merchandise, it goes to your hotel room or your house. Your fast food, you save it on your phone. You walk in the restaurant knows you're here, delivers the food fresh to you. On average, the average guest now has 2 hours free time a day that they didn't have 4 years ago. And what do you do in your free time in Disney parks? Spend money. And so biggest revenue generating idea since the gates of Disneyland opened on July 17th, 1955, by not asking, how might we make more money, but finding out what's important to our consumer and asking how we might solve that.
It's almost the sort of Uber situation on steroids, if you will, like the Uber seamless transition in and out of the vehicle, but you've just multiplied that by everything that happens in the park.
Yeah, I mean, it's I'm a great believer in crowdsourcing, and crowd sharing is going to get bigger. I don't think my children will own a property. Well, what's that going to do to the property market? The realtors, timeshare, bye. They're sharing everything now, and so I also believe most companies are they're frightened of innovation, and everybody's getting an innovation. Let's get a chief innovation officer. A team of 20 people. Well, if you've got a huge organization, how are you going to change a culture with 20 people? What people want, every CEO right now wants innovation. They don't know how to get it, and nobody's made it tangible for them. I got fed up because I was head of innovation creativity, so I had to learn. So I went to every conference, every seminar, and I called them the hallelujah speakers, the guys who come in, hey, everybody's great, isn't everything great? Oh, it's going to be wonderful. Oh, piss off. Give me something I can use tomorrow at work to think differently and change my own business, be it a big one or a small one. Give people the tools. And so if you give people tools that are easy to use and fun, then you can change your culture, because then people will use them when you're not around. And so that's what I created, was a toolkit that enables primarily the big companies. And these are the ones that are going. We've seen Sears go this year. We've seen Toys R Us go this year. I think you'll see at least 50 major brands go every year in the next 5 years.
So I can see a world where they can get you in for a full day workshop or a couple of days, and they're making that happen. It sounds good. They bring some of the executives in. They might bring a slightly varied group of people from the organization. How do you get them to take real action against that, rather than working on just those?
No, that's very fair. Yeah. No, it's about, again, give them the tools. So what I tend to do is people will invite me in to run a workshop. You're absolutely right. But then what you'll do is you'll say, right, I never let them bring a real challenge. Everybody wants a real challenge, right? Because they want to try and solve something. You're not going to solve it by 5 o'clock, and you're not going to listen. You're not going to learn. So you'll have learned nothing. So when I leave, you wasted your money. But if you take a fake challenge, people will relax, they'll listen, they'll learn. But the very next day, you line up a team of 4 or 5 innovation catalysts, and you already have a project lined up. So they immediately have to start using the tools tomorrow. And don't go for world peace on your first project. Start small, get a few quick wins, and if you get some wins, you'll build bigger teams and bigger teams and bigger teams. Innovation needs to be in everybody's DNA. You can't have just an innovation department. I think companies that have just an innovation department are going to get. I think there's another couple of ways at it. Accelerator programs. If you I believe in open source innovation. A lot of companies won't. They're frightened of open source innovation. If you have a company of 20 people, if you have a company of 500,000 people, well, that's your limit. But the planet has how many billions of people? But if you go out and say, hey, we're looking for a new idea. So, for example, here's a perfect example. London 2012 Olympic Games. There's no reason you should remember the logo. It was a shit logo. In fact, it spelled the word. If you took and of course the British consumers, God bless them, figured it out pretty quickly, that if you rearrange the 2012 in the different blocks that they came in, the block spelled the word shit. And so they spent $50 million on the logo. Right? And so they unveiled it. Everybody said it's a disaster. But within 24 hours, you Google it, they had over 20,000 consumers submitted another logo. Right? They didn't ask for it, but they got it. Now, think about how they could change perception overnight. So, for example, instead of saying this is my games, the elite games, right? People want to know that it's their games. They're paying their taxes. Well, what if you crowdsource the logo? Right, and so there was one little kid drew. You remember the London Underground sign, right? The red circle, the blue line, London 2012. You're like, come on, right? So here's the thing: companies hide behind intellectual property. They say, if somebody submits an idea, right? What they're rarely saying is, I'm scared that if somebody has a better idea than I do, I'm out of a job. And I'm a massive believer. Open source innovation will come because it's the only way companies will be able to survive.
So take me back to a time maybe where you've managed to convince a team to innovate, whether that's within Disney or just someone you've been working with, and it just hasn't worked. And do you have a story on something that's just failed on them?
There's plenty of failures.
I'm sure you have it. I'm sure you've got a good story.
So I asked the executives at Disney to get on a plane, fly home back to their hometowns, and book a Walt Disney World vacation without using their assistants or their husbands or wives, and fly in economy. They were given a budget for a rental car, stay at the Holiday Inn, buy a ticket, and they had a $50 spending allowance each day, and they wouldn't do it. And so I said, then you'll never understand your consumer.
They wouldn't consume their own product.
No. Well, not as their consumer does. Yeah, and I think that's the big challenge for a lot of cars. I spoke to Stanley Black & Decker recently. I talked about that downstairs. And, they're like any tool company, they're challenged. They're trying to grow their business. And I said, well, have you spent time with your consumer? So I went down, spent time with their consumer in a DIY store, and I just listened. I said, look, when I went back to them, I said, look, nobody, this young generation that's coming, they're not talking about your brand. They're not talking about the price point. They're not talking about the product. What they're talking about very excitedly amongst themselves is building our dream kitchen, our dream living room, our dream house. I said, your purpose, if you choose to take it, is your purpose is you're a brand who can help people build their dreams. It's a very strong brand proposition for a tool company, right? And I said, well, what other lines of business could you get into? And they sort of looked at me mystically as if to say, why would we want to? I said, well, guys, we're building in houses in 3D in Texas today, right? And so what will you and I buy on Amazon 10 years from today that we will print at home? I reckon 20% of what we buy today we'll print at home because that saves Amazon shipping and production. So it's in their interest to make sure you get a 3D printer. Yep. And if you buy the table, you'll probably have to get it at your local printers because there'll be a bigger printer. If you can print 20% of what you buy today, right? And then eventually you can print anything you want. What are you going to use a tool for 10 years from today? Nothing.
It might sit on the shelf as
but because they're focused on quarterly results and their 2% margin growth, they're not looking out and looking at the dangers that are coming and the level of disruption.
So, how do you sell the ROI story then? If they're so focused, and I know they're so focused on those quarterly results. How do you drive that budget? How do you make them step outside and go, you know what, this is something we have to do? I mean, is it using those analogies of the Kodaks and the Blockbusters? And
yes, I think so. I mean, it's disrupt or die. Yeah. I just wrote an article about disrupt or die because it's not about iteration anymore. We've all been a product centric. We've all built it, they will come. I've worked for a large automotive company recently. They've had 120 years of making cars and they know how to make a car really well. And that's their biggest challenge. So you've got Google come into the market, now Apple saying, we're going to make cars. We don't know how to make a car. Don't think you need a steering wheel though. Well, which one of those three companies do you think, or which two of those three will be around 10 years from today and which one won't, right? Yeah. The company steeped in legacy, going for its 2% margin quarterly results, no, they're gone.
So you finish up at Disney and you embark on effectively a personal brand and journey in a different way. You've come from a corporate life, and it is a transition. How do you get going?
Wow. So they gave me the Jiminy Cricket bronze thank you for 30 magical years statue, and I looked at it, and my first reaction, I wasn't supposed to have that reaction. It was just human. I just thought, shit, I'm going to be dead soon. And so the same week I got my life insurance policy, the update, and they were like, yep. 74, you're out. I thought, oh Christ, I'm 2/3 of the way through. I better go do something else. And I thought, so I went and sat in a pub in Cornwall for 6 weeks, just sat in a pub, and I tried to draw up a list of other companies I might want to work for. But once you've been head of innovation creativity for the world's most creative company, I couldn't put a single name on the piece of paper. I thought, nah, screw it. But how might I go and help others? And so my goal for the first year, or actually in the first 2 or 3 years, was to raise enough money to support my family, retirement, and then if I could pick 1 or 2 projects a year where I could go help somebody else, somebody who's making a difference, who doesn't have quarterly results. And delighted enough in the first year to come to Australia to help over 1,000 different charities for work. And I got a letter on LinkedIn. Where's my phone? Can't remember where it is. Anyway, got a letter from a lady yesterday who said, she said something along the lines of basically, she's been told so many times she's not creative, she gave up. But she said this presentation gave her the courage to try again. And you just thought, and the tools. And you know what? I'd rather have that than a check any day, right? And I'm off to Maputo, Mozambique. I hope the pilot knows where he's going. And I'm going to help the young leaders for a week. Don't charge them a penny. And that's the value in life, right? And so I'm now behaving like Generation Z. I believe in purpose over profit, but I didn't for a long time. And so it's kind of a nice place to be.
Well, I mean, they hold you in that box, right? Even as a head of creativity and innovation, you're held in a box in how you're allowed to approach things within that company. I mean, you're still that title, but it's it's with under our direction.
Oh yeah. The funny thing that I'd also encourage companies to think about is stop treating your employees like idiots. You've hired them for a reason. We hire people in, right? They're very valuable, and the moment they come in, they're 1/3 less valuable. So we go hire consultants because they're gurus. You're like, guys, you have incredible talent within. It's amazing how we forget the talent within. I also think that for my advice that I offer downstairs is I asked anybody who spent a day in the house of one of their consumers. I think 2 people in that room of 400 or however, 2 people put their hands up. And then, well, how can you be relevant to your consumers if you've never spent a day with them? And you'd be amazed at the insights that you can't find in big data that you can get simply by spending a day with your consumer and by looking in different places from your competition. Because if they're all only looking in big data, they'll only come up with one result. So for example, you've got at the moment the big hotel chains, right? They're all competing on how can I use technology so I can lay off all my labor costs, right?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So they'll enter into an arms race, and then everybody loses in an arms race. And but I said to them, I said, well, hang on a minute. High tech enables high touch. Right, and what industry? Oh, hospitality. Oh, okay. And who are your consumers? Oh, humans. I believe high tech enables high touch. In fact, we did an experiment at Disney, and instead of laying off the front desk of employees at the Contemporary Resort Hotel, when we introduced the Magic Band, you didn't have to check in anymore. Don't need front desk employees. So of course the finance guys roll in. Oh, let's lay off everybody. You're like, well, hang on a minute, lads. So all we did was bring them out from behind the desk, and we made them personal concierges to the people who can't afford a personal concierge. And so suddenly we saw intent to recommend and intent to return shoot up through the roof. And then on top of that, we did a formal pilot on board the Disney cruise ships, and we asked the stateroom hosts, the people that clean the cabins, instead of cleaning 24-hour cabins in your shift, we want you to clean 19. You get 1 free hour. All we want you to do is engage and talk with our guests. Intent to return, intent to recommend went up higher than any capital investment we'd never made on board a Disney ship. And so high tech enables high touch. Not every industry needs it, but certainly the hospitality. How will you distinguish yourself as a hospitality brand? I believe high tech will enable high touch.
So I've heard you talk about, I mean, there's a bit of a stigma that small businesses struggle with creativity and they're not that creative and not that innovative.
Bullshit.
But I've heard you say it's bullshit. And I would agree. Why? Like, why do you think that they don't think that they have the ability to create and innovate?
Because they've been told. Yeah. So we go to school and somebody picks their finger in your face and goes, you're not creative. And then you get a job in finance, or you're a lawyer, or you're in a hospital, you're a doctor, you're a nurse, you're an operator, you're a fireman, and somebody says, you're not creative. The creatives are over there. And it's so stupid because we all end up thinking, oh, we're not creative. But then you ask people, like, if you say, who's creative? 2% of the room will put their hand up. And then if you just reframe the question and say, who here was a child once? Everybody smiles. Everybody puts their hand up. We all had the giant gift at Christmas. We all took out the toy and we all spent the rest of the day playing with the box, right? And then we go to school. And the teacher says, oh, it's a box. And so your creativity gets kicked out of you through education. And so I think Sir Ken Robinson is probably one of the most powerful speakers on the need for creativity in education. And I think with artificial intelligence coming into the marketplace, it's going to take away so many jobs, so many industries. But the good news is our 4 powers that we're born creative. All humans are born creative. We all play with the cardboard box, right? We all have an amazing imagination. And people think, oh, I don't. Well, wait a minute. What about that dream you had last week, right? I mean, we've all had the weird one. And so we all have amazing intuition, very powerful. You have more neurons in your, more in your stomach than you have in your head. It's called your second brain, and we make decisions, and we call it a gut reaction, and we're all very curious as a child. And so the things that, I'm not asking people to be childish, but childlike. Those 4 skill sets, I believe, will be the most powerful 4 skill sets anybody has in the next decade, because they'll be the 4 skill sets that artificial intelligence can't replicate.
Yeah. So what blocks us from this creativity? What stops us from creating or being more creative in what we do?
Our own, I call it your river of thinking. The more expertise and the more experience you get in any industry, the more reasons you know why something won't work. And so you automatically think, oh, no, because we tried that last year. Legal will never go for that. It's not a strategic brand fit, blah, 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 blah. And so instead of considering how might we, which is how children think, we automatically think reductively. Yep. So there are some tools people can use to help them think differently. I talked this afternoon about naive experts. Simply by inviting somebody into the room who doesn't think like you. Diversity is innovation. If people don't look like you, they don't think like you, and therefore they'll help you think differently. And so I shared the story of some architects I got in the room, and I asked them to draw a house, and they all drew an identical house. And then except my naive expert was a chef, and she was from a different country, and she was female, she was younger. She drew dim sum architecture, which looked like a round bamboo dish that your dim sum comes in. And everybody laughed because they realized they stayed in their river of thinking what a house should look like. She got got them out of their river of thinking to consider audacious architecture. And if any company in the world could consider audacious architecture, it would be Disney. The naive expert will not solve your challenge for you, but they will say something. They'll ask the silly question that you're too worried about what your friends think or your peers. They'll throw out the silly idea. They've got no skin in the game. They'll get you out of your river of thinking and thinking differently. On the way out the door, somebody slapped a sticker over, a post-it note over her picture. It said, distinctly Disney, authentically Chinese. 7 years later, the strategic brand position for Shanghai Disney Resort, distinctly Disney, authentically Chinese.
Yeah, it's such a strange thing, like when you think about creativity. I mean, look, I was a trained accountant. That's where I started my life. And it took me a long time to realize how creative I was in business, in other things we do. I mean, in creating events and things like this. And it's funny how it's just, you were pigeonholed and put on a plane. It's like, no, that's where you're going. That's what you do. And we just, we refuse to believe and accept that what we all do all the time is creative. So what do you think that modern workplace might look like as it moves forward? It's a bit more AI, all these extra skill sets. What do we do?
I mean, look, the finance team at Disney World were one of the most creative teams on the planet because they kept me in budget. And the legal team were very creative because they stopped me from getting arrested. So they're all creative. Yeah. I think the workplace has to change. Yeah. I think the first thing, every company will need a purpose. If they don't have a purpose, if you think about Apple versus Dell doesn't make computers anymore. Apple said, our purpose is we will help the planet think different. How will we do that? We'll make products that help you. Dell said, we make computers. Bye. Right? They're the purpose first. And this generation is not only, I'm doing some work for some major corporations in the States at the moment, because they've just realized, okay, without a purpose, not only will this generation not buy your products and services because they don't think you're relevant, they don't want to work for you either. So I think that's part of it. I think the other thing is, I've seen workspaces, right? We all legal sits on the 4th floor. Finance sits on the 3rd floor. Marketing sits on the 2nd floor. So Steve Jobs, when he came to Pixar, he designed the entire campus around unplanned collaboration. It was specifically designed, and the new Apple campus that's opened up in Cupertino last week that he helped design before he passed away was built around unplanned collaboration. It's about creating a space where to bring people together who wouldn't normally meet, to have a conversation they're not supposed to have, to spark a new idea.
I love it. Now, Duncan, do you read much?
Yes, I read a lot, but I tell you why I love planes. Nobody can bother you on a plane. The Wi-Fi is still crap, right? Which, thank God, it's still crap, because it's the only. So talk about the power of time to think, right? So if you were in an argument with somebody, right, and you walk away, 5 minutes later, you always come up with that killer one-liner, the one line you wished you'd used during the argument. If you ask people where they get their best ideas, we heard it downstairs: shower, bathroom, toilet, walking, running, jogging, drinking a glass of wine. Nobody said at work. Because at work, your brain is stressed, right? And when you're in an argument, your brain is stressed. And when your brain is stressed, you can't open that door between your conscious and subconscious brain. But the moment you give yourself time to think, is when you 5 minutes after the argument are in the shower, bang, you come up with a killer one-line or the big idea. So I think the biggest challenge to corporations is we know we need time to think, but then we fill everybody's diaries. So if I were to ask you, the number one barrier to innovation is considered time to think. The number one innovative company in the world, or certainly in the top 3, Google. Well, what do Google do that nobody else does? Guess what? They give their employees time to think. You could call it design thinking. My mother would call it common sense. So give your employees time to think. And now they give their employees 20% time, their engineers. Not every company could afford to do that, but perhaps one day a month. No emails, no presentations, no meetings, and see how it goes. One day a month, have a brown bag breakfast around wherever, get everybody to bring their breakfast with them, and sit around from 9 till 10:30 in the morning. The only thing you can't talk about is work. But get everybody to come in prepared to talk about something that they've seen that's innovative or creative in the last 30 days. And but it can't be in your industry. No PowerPoint presentations. No, God knows people have got enough work to do. No, why is it good for the business? Just something they're passionate about. You'll be amazed at the amount of ideas you could tie back to that breakfast.
So if you had to go in solitary confinement for 1 year and you could take one book with you, what would it be?
Creative Inc. by Ed Catmull at Pixar.
I've got that sitting there, I don't know.
I
haven't looked at it
after my
yet,
team at Disney was called Creative Inc.
Oh, I'm going to read that.
Yeah, it's a very good book.
I had that on my list for a long time, cool. So awesome. What's one weird app that you've got on your home screen on your phone or something, either creative or just you couldn't live without?
Pornhub.com. No, I'm just kidding.
We'll have a look.
I don't know. Let's have a look. See if it's there. Oh, no, it's not. You know what? for me, it's LinkedIn. And it's funny because people downstairs said LinkedIn doesn't drive business. I'm like, oh, yeah, I'm doing quite well on LinkedIn. Thanks very much. I would say for me, I'm on Twitter, I'm on LinkedIn, and I'm on Instagram. I didn't realize the power of social media 12 months ago because I wasn't on the social media team. Now I'm an individual entrepreneur, and the power it has to drive results is because it's all social influence. I, by the way, am the only person, or very few, I do not believe in advertising. I think some people say half your money is spent on advertising is wasted. We're not sure which half. I disagree. I think 100% of the money spent on advertising. No, if I come and tell you, here's another industry that needs blown up, marketing. Marketing at. No, it worked for 50 years. Great, well done, bravo you. It doesn't work anymore. No. The savvy, they get it, right? They know when they're being marketed at. I used to go for my news to the BBC every day. I stopped 2 weeks ago because I will not be interrupted by advertisements. By the way, brand people, your advertisements piss me off. They annoy me because I'm enjoying something and you flash something in my face and I have to find the silly little close button. Piss off. But create great social, engage with me, create great social, or have your influencers engage with me and I will buy your products and services. Why people still advertise is beyond me. It basically means if you have to advertise, you don't have a good product or service. So I think you're going to see marketing go and an insistence on great product design and great experiences. Look at Walt Disney. Disneyland is experiential marketing. So if you think about Bugs Bunny, Daffy Duck, Barney the dinosaur, and thank God he's dead. But all of those characters that we grew up with that are dead. But Mickey Mouse is still alive. Well, why is Mickey still? What gave him permission to live when Bugs Bunny, Daffy Duck, Goofy, not Goofy, he's still going, all the rest went away? Mickey has a place where people can come and touch and feel and play with the brand. It's a brand experience. And I think that companies will need to create, they're calling it, at the moment they call it experiential marketing. That also means they haven't got it, right? Create great products, create great services and have a purpose.
I think that's where people let themselves down with the whole social media thing too. You still need to connect with the people. Like you can do a lot digitally, but that touch, that meeting in different places, it might only have to be once physically, but it makes an incredible impact and just leverages everything that does happen on a digital plane. We can't just do it all in that world.
No, actually, my life's become a nightmare because up until 12 months ago, I had a gatekeeper. Her name was Trish, right? If you wanted to speak to me, you got to go through Trish. But I will tell you, I'm proud to say that if anybody contacted me at any moment in time in 30 years, everybody got a reply from me, not from Trish. It might take me a week to get back to them. It might not be the message they wanted to hear, but they got a reply. It's because your mother tells you it's good manners, right? I mean, come on, right? And so to me, and now here's the thing, because now everybody's coming at you on Instagram messaging, IM, WhatsApp, Twitter, and it's like spinning plates, but I will get back to everybody because again, you're right, it's about that touch.
So if you had to tell my small business audience, what's the one thing that they can do right now to amplify their business, what would you say?
Give yourself time to think.
Time to think. And how do you carve that out? What's the practical example?
Take it one day a month. Don't do any presentations, no emails and no meetings. Give your team time to think.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for coming today.
Thank you very much
enjoyed
indeed.
having you on the podcast too, and I look forward to sharing this out.
Right.
So where can people find you, Duncan? We'll just...
DuncanWardle.com.
DuncanWardle.com. You heard it from the man himself. So thank you everyone for listening and we'll catch you next time.
Cool. Thanks very much.